Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Eating Well for a Healthy Heart with Type 2 Diabetes workshop. We will start with an overview of what will be covered in this workshop. First, we will introduce ourselves, who we are, and what we do. Next, we will talk about the importance of heart-healthy diet. After that, we will dig a little deeper and discuss each component of a heart-healthy diet, such as fiber, healthy fats, plant proteins, and reducing stored sodium in diet. This workshop is presented by Dalla School of Public Health at the University of Toronto in collaboration with Credit Valley Family Health Team. My name is Namra, and I will be co-facilitating this workshop along with my colleagues.
Hi, my name is Doreen.
Hi, I'm Claire.
And I'm Alyssa.
We are all graduate students in the Master of Public Health program, specializing in nutrition and diet at the University of Toronto. Now I will hand over to Doreen, who will talk about the importance of a heart-healthy diet.
Thanks, Namra. So the learning objectives for this workshop are to learn the importance and components of a heart-healthy diet, to understand how to add more fiber into one's diet, to understand the difference between good and bad fats and how to choose healthy fats, to understand what plant proteins are and how to add them to one's diet, and to understand how to increase sodium in one's diet, to decrease sodium in one's diet. So next we will be talking about the importance and components of a heart-healthy diet. Please share with us your thoughts. Thank you all for your responses. These were all great points. To summarize, the three main takeaways for why a heart-healthy diet is important is 1, it reduces the risk of heart disease. 2, it helps reduce blood pressure. And 3, it increases your energy levels. And we will mention these 3 points later on in the workshop when we talk in more detail about each component of a heart-healthy diet. So in general, people with diabetes have a higher risk of developing heart disease. It's about twice the risk. And this is because heart nerves and blood vessels, which are the tubes in your body in which your blood flows, they can be harmed by high blood sugar. Because of that, this risk really depends on the management of your diabetes. And the better managed the diabetes is, the less the risk is going to be. But it is also important to make changes to your diet to lower your risk of heart disease, and this is why we are conducting this workshop for you today. So the 4 main components of a heart-healthy diet that we will be discussing today are fiber, healthy fats, plant proteins, and low sodium. It's important to mention here that these are not the only components of a heart-healthy diet. There are more, but these are the 4 main points that we hope you will leave this workshop remembering, understanding, and adding into your diet. And now we will switch over to Namra, who will talk more about fiber.
Okay, thanks, Doreen. Fiber is an essential component of a heart-healthy diet and provides many, many benefits. However, Canadians only consume half of the recommended daily intake. Recommended amount of fiber for adults over the age of 50 is 21 grams for women and 30 grams for men. For individuals with diabetes, fiber can help them with blood sugar control and weight management. It can also lower their risk of heart disease and some cancers. So the sources of fiber are vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes. Fiber can specifically help with controlling blood sugars. As fiber cannot be digested by the body, it doesn't cause a spike in blood sugars the way other sugars can. This helps in keeping blood sugars in check. It protects the heart. Fiber prevents body from taking in some fat and cholesterol from the diet. Therefore, it lowers cholesterol levels in the body and reduces the risk of heart disease. It maintains digestive health. Fiber helps clean out any bacteria or buildup to improve gut health and reduces the risk of colon cancer. It keeps us full and helps with weight management. Since fiber cannot be digested, it moves slowly through the stomach, making us feel full for longer. As many foods high in fiber are also low in calories, which also helps with weight loss. There are 2 different types of fiber. Each has its own important health benefits. Diet should have both soluble and insoluble fiber for maximum benefit. Soluble fiber dissolves in water to form a gel-like substance in the stomach and slows down digestion. This helps to control blood sugars and cholesterol, which can help in manage diabetes and also reduces the risk of developing diabetes-related complications. Insoluble fiber, on the other hand, does not dissolve in water and typically remains whole as it passes through the stomach. It helps control blood sugar levels and also keeps us regular. Some of the sources of soluble fiber are apples, bananas, oats, peas, black beans and lima beans, and avocados. Some of the sources of insoluble fiber are skin of fruits and vegetables, whole wheat flour, nuts, seeds, and bran. Ways to add fiber in the diet. Have a fiber-rich breakfast. So we would like to hear from you what could be some of the ways you can add fiber to your breakfast. If you would like, please share your thoughts with us in the chat function below. Some of the options that we came up was adding veggies to omelets or having it whole grain or having it with whole grain toast, having a bowl of oatmeal with nuts and berries, having high fiber cereal or having a high fiber cereal are some of the ways you can add fiber to your breakfast. Next is avoid refined grains and choose whole grains instead. Swap white bread for whole grain bread, white rice for quinoa or brown rice, or choose whole wheat pasta instead of regular pasta. Choose more non-starchy vegetables. Non-starchy vegetables are high in fiber and low in sugar than starchy vegetables. Some of the examples of starchy vegetables are corn, peas, potatoes, yams, etc. Non-starchy vegetables are spinach, celery, kale, tomatoes, onions, eggplant, and cucumber. So a salad made from these vegetables will be a great fiber-rich addition to your meal. The next is add beans and legumes to your diet. Legumes such as peas and lentils or different kinds of beans such as kidney, lima, navy, or garbanzo beans can be added to soup, stews, and salads. Next, last but not the least, is snack on fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. So choose fruits and vegetables such as bananas, apples, pears, or baby carrots to snack on. Keep pistachios, almonds, and sunflower seeds handy for a quick fiber-rich snack. The key here is to take it slow and add a bit more fiber every day. A sudden increase in fiber can lead to uncomfortable digestive problems such as constipation, bloating, gas, etc. Also drink plenty of water to help food move easily through the system. Now we will show you a video we made. This video includes foods that are high in fiber. You can consider adding these foods to your grocery list when you go for grocery shopping next time.
Fiber helps keep the bad cholesterol in check, keep blood sugar within normal ranges, and help us feel full for longer. So how can we increase our fiber intake? Next time you go grocery shopping, put these items in your cart. Fruits are a great source of fiber. Consider having whole fruits rather than fruit juices. 1 medium apple has 3 grams of fiber. Apple peel has the most fiber, so don't forget to eat it. 1 medium orange has 3 grams of fiber. 1 medium-sized banana has 3 grams of fiber. Pear has 6 grams of fiber. Exotic fruits are also great sources of fiber. 1 small papaya has 3 grams of fiber. 1 persimmon has 6 grams of fiber. 1 cup of cut mangoes has 3 grams of fiber. 1 cup of raspberries has 8 grams of fiber. Vegetables are also great sources of fiber. Consider adding non-starchy vegetables to your diet. 1 cup of cooked spinach has 4 grams of fiber. Half a cup of broccoli has 3 grams of fiber. Half a cup of Brussels sprouts has 2 grams of fiber. 1 medium carrot has 2 grams of fiber. Other vegetables high in fiber include medium-sized artichoke has 10 grams of fiber. 1 cup of collard greens, which has 4 grams of fiber. 1 medium-sized potato or sweet potato has 3 grams of fiber. When it comes to fiber, cereal fiber may be your best choice. Look at the nutrition labels and choose cereals that have more than 5 grams of fiber per serving. Cereals that are great sources of fiber are Fiber One cereal has 14 grams of fiber per half a cup. All brand cereal has 10 grams of fiber per half a cup. Cooked oatmeal has 4 grams of fiber per 1 cup. Substitute white rice for brown rice, wild rice, barley or bulgur wheat. 1 cup of brown rice has 4 grams of fiber. 1 cup of cooked barley has 9 grams of fiber. Replace white bread with 12-grain, dark rye, cracked wheat or pumpernickel bread. Legumes are great sources of insoluble and soluble fiber. All the beans are fiber-rich, with navy beans and white beans having the highest amount of fiber. Half a cup of cooked kidney beans has 6 grams of fiber. Half a cup of cooked lima beans has 6 grams of fiber. Half a cup of canned baked beans has 5 grams of fiber. Nuts and seeds are also great sources of fiber. An ounce of pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, sunflower seeds, almonds and pistachios have at least 3 grams of fiber. Thank you for watching.
Okay, thank you for watching that video. Now we have some poll questions for you. So you will be presented with a question through the poll function, and you have to pick the correct option out of the 4 options provided. So here is the first question.
Hi, I'm Claire. I'll be talking about healthy fats. First, we have a question for you before we start talking about healthy fats. Can you share with us an example of a healthy fat? Use the chat function at the bottom of your screen to type your thoughts and share with us. Okay. Despite what you may have heard, avoiding all fat in your diet is not the way to a healthy heart. Fat is a necessary part of a healthy diet. It helps keep us full longer, it can add flavor to a meal, and it helps our bodies to absorb certain nutrients such as vitamins A, D, E, and K. Fat in our bodies helps to keep us warm, and it's important for our body's cells to operate properly, for our skin to be healthy, and for making hormones in our bodies. However, most Canadians eat more fat than their bodies need. While eating a diet lower in fat is associated with a healthy heart, nutritional research has found that what type of fat you eat makes a big difference for the risk factors of heart disease. There are 2 main types of fat in our food: saturated fat and unsaturated fat. Eating too much saturated fat is associated with an increased risk of developing heart disease, vascular diseases such as narrowed arteries, and stroke. Research has shown that by replacing unsaturated fat for the saturated fat in one's diet, the risk of cardiovascular disease can be reduced by 30%. So eating a lot of saturated fat has been shown to increase the amount of LDL cholesterol, also known as bad cholesterol, in a person's blood. LDL cholesterol is the bad type of cholesterol because when too much of it is floating around in a person's bloodstream, it can clog arteries, so the blood vessels that bring blood back to your heart. If the artery becomes completely blocked, blood will not be able to travel through the artery anymore, which may lead to a heart attack or a stroke. While high amounts of LDL cholesterol in one's blood is associated with heart and vascular disease, it does not mean that cholesterol in one's food must be strictly avoided. Research has found that the cholesterol found in food does not have a large impact on blood cholesterol, and that large amounts of saturated fat is the main reason for high LDL cholesterol. Saturated fat is mainly found in meats and milk products such as cheese, cream, butter, ghee, whole, also known as homogenized milk, and high-fat yogurt, as well as pastries and sweets made from these foods. Coconut oil and palm kernel oil are also high in saturated fat and should be eaten less often. So some ways to reduce the amount of saturated fat in your diet. You can, when cooking red meat or poultry, i.e. chicken or turkey at home, you can reduce the amount of saturated fat by trimming off visible fat and skin before cooking. Or if you're buying ground meat to cook, choose the lean or extra lean options. Organ meats such as kidneys and liver tend to be pretty high in saturated fat and shouldn't be eaten too often. Processed meats such as hot dogs, bacon, and cold cuts like salami also tend to be high in saturated fat, as well as sodium, and should not be eaten regularly. Crispy breaded fried foods and cream sauces, and rich restaurant meals are commonly high in saturated fat. Chicken or turkey breasts without the skin are meats with low amounts of saturated fat. Another way to lower the amount of saturated fat in your meals is by eating low-fat dairy products. Choose skim or 1% milk instead of whole or homogenized milk. Eat lower fat cheeses and yogurts. Take your coffee with milk or plant-based milk instead of cream. Use margarine in place of butter to spread on your toast or when baking. Avoid cooking with large tropical oils or butter, and instead use an oil such as canola or olive oil. Eat store-bought pastries and cookies rarely, because these often have a significant amount of saturated fat and sugar. When buying snack foods from a store, look at the label and try to find ones that have less than 5% of your daily recommended saturated fat. Eat out less often and cook at home so that you know what's in your food. Now, you may have heard of trans fat and that it's very bad for your heart. While a very small amount of trans fat occurs naturally in some foods, the amounts that naturally occur in foods will not affect your heart health. Artificial trans fat, on the other hand, is quite bad for heart health and is associated with an increase in LDL cholesterol in the blood. However, there's some good news regarding artificial trans fat, and that is that the Canadian federal government banned it from the Canadian food supply. So Canadian food companies can't use it to make food anymore. It's not produced in Canada anymore, and it's not allowed in imported food either. The main sources of unsaturated fat, that's the good fat, are found in plants and fish. Good sources of unsaturated fat, as I said, are fish. It's recommended that adults eat fish 2 or 3 times a week for the best benefits. However, it's understood that not everyone eats fish, whether because they are vegetarian or have an allergy, it's out of their budget, or they don't like fish. Other good sources of unsaturated fat include nuts and seeds, avocados, and plant oils such as olive oil, canola oil, and sunflower oil. A good way to add flax seeds to your meals or snack is by grinding flax seeds in a blender, spice grinder, or food processor, and adding a bit of it to oatmeal in the morning, or stirring it into yogurt or sprinkling it on a salad. Chopped walnuts, can be eaten in the same way, or just plain as a snack. Avocados are a fantastic source of unsaturated fat, and they're not just for guacamole. They're great spread on a sandwich instead of butter or mayonnaise. They're also delicious in a salad or blended into a smoothie to increase creaminess and to make it more filling. Tahini, also known as sesame paste, mixed with a bit of warm water, lemon juice, and garlic makes a fantastic creamy sauce that can be eaten with pita, veggies, beans, meat, or almost anything. Natural nut butters, that is without added sugar or palm oil, such as peanut butter or almond butter, are delicious and great sources of protein and unsaturated fat. They're fantastic spread on toast or apple slices for a snack that will help keep you satisfied until your next meal. You may have heard of omega-3 fatty acids and wondered what they are. Well, omega-3s are a type of unsaturated fat that is linked to heart health. And our bodies don't make them, so we need to eat them in food. Eating foods containing this type of fat on a regular basis has been linked to healthier blood vessels and a lower risk of stroke and heart failure. A great source of omega-3s are fatty fish such as salmon, mackerel, trout, sardines, anchovies, herring, and swordfish. Good vegetarian sources of omega-3s include flax seeds and chia seeds, walnuts, and canola oil. Now, what are some of your favorite foods containing healthy fats? Use the chat function at the bottom of your screen to type your thoughts and share with us.
Okay, thanks, Claire. So now we will be moving on to plant proteins. But before we get into plant proteins, we want to check in to see how everyone is doing. Please type in the chat if you have any questions at any point, and we will be sure to monitor the chat, and we will be replying at the end of this workshop during our Q&A. So moving on to the third component, but before we talk about plant proteins, we should first talk about what protein is. Well, protein is a substance that our body needs to work properly and to build muscles. We have protein in our body. However, we also need to get protein from the food that we eat. And since our heart is made up of muscles, it also needs protein, and it is made up of protein. And so it's important for us to eat protein from food in order for the heart to be able to work and pump blood throughout the body. And so protein is important in making the heart stronger. But protein is also important in diabetes because it helps control blood sugars. So as you can see in this graph on the slide, it shows that when we eat only carbohydrates, we can see a big spike of our blood sugar. But when we add protein in with the carbohydrates, that spike becomes much less. And that's how protein helps to control our blood sugars. So now that we've understood what protein is, we can now talk about plant proteins. Plant proteins are exactly what the name suggests. They are proteins that are found in plants or the food that we grow. On the screen are some examples of plant proteins. On the left here, we have walnuts. In the middle, we have green beans. And the last one on the right is chickpeas. So a lot of you might be wondering why plant proteins are helpful. Well, plant proteins are first, they are high in fiber. And like we talked about earlier in this presentation, fiber has many benefits, including that it leads to a healthy heart, like Namra mentioned. Plant proteins are also low in the bad fats, and they can be a source of good fats. And that also reinforces the point about healthy fats that we talked about earlier. And so we have less saturated fat and more unsaturated fat. And finally, plant proteins are known to be very rich in nutrients, and they can provide our body and our heart with the vitamins and minerals that it needs to work properly. Some examples of plant proteins include nuts and seeds, including peanuts. So peanuts are considered to have the highest amount of protein among all the nuts. And then we have almonds, pistachios, cashews, and then walnuts. There are also chickpeas and chickpea dips, which can be enjoyed in so many ways, and we will also talk about that shortly. So an example of a chickpea dip is hummus. So some of you might know that, you might like that, you might eat that a lot. And then we also have tofu and soy. They are also great sources of plant proteins. And then we have beans and pulses, including things like kidney beans, white beans, lentils, and dried peas. So in case you had some difficulties trying to come up with examples in the activity that we just did, we decided to give you some examples to get you thinking about how you can add more plant proteins into your diet. So as you can see, for breakfast, you can add a handful of nuts to your breakfast. You can have hummus on toast, and it's a plus if that toast also has seeds in it. So that's 2 sources of plant proteins in one meal. And then you can also have a tofu scramble. So that's like scrambled eggs, but instead of eggs, you use tofu. For snacks, you can have carrots and a hummus dip, or you can have a trail mix, so a mix of different nuts with some raisins or cranberries. So again, a handful is enough. We can also have crispy chickpeas, which is a spoiler because we will be doing a crispy chickpeas in our food demonstration today in this workshop. And then we have peanut butter and banana. So the peanut butter would be the source of plant proteins in this case. And then for lunch, you can have rice and beans bowl. You can have rice with lentils and vegetables. You can have a chickpea wrap or a bean burrito or even a lentil stew. And then for dinner, there are things like pasta and crispy tofu, or you can have bulgur with red beans and vegetables, or a stir fry with tofu.
Thank you so much, Doreen. So next we'll be discussing how to reduce sodium in your diet. So the very first thing that I want to talk about is what sodium is. So just to start us off, sodium is a mineral that's naturally found in our foods, and it's most commonly, it's found in table salt. Sodium is actually necessary for our body, and it has many important functions. And some of these include helping with nerve and muscle function, as well as managing blood pressure. So now just since we talked about it in the poll question, we determined what the largest source of sodium in our diets is. So now I just wanted to talk about what other sources of sodium are in our diet. So there are small amounts that are naturally present in foods, but as we just mentioned, most is added during processing and preparation. So a lot of times sodium is added to our foods to add flavor, as well as it can act as a preservative. So for example, in canned foods, there's usually a lot of sodium to help it have a longer shelf life. And then the pictures that I have on this slide here just depict the largest sources of sodium in our diet. So we have from top to bottom, we have baked goods, processed meats, so things like cold cuts or as pictured here, a hot dog. Then we have salty snacks, so like chips or pretzels. And then the last picture or another large source of sodium would be restaurant meals or ready-to-eat meals. So you may be wondering how much sodium is too much sodium. So as I just mentioned, there is a certain amount of sodium that is necessary for our bodies, and that is the first number that we have here on the slide. So 1,500 milligrams is how much sodium we need, our body needs in order to function properly. And the second number I have here is 2,300 milligrams, and that is the maximum amount that we can safely consume before we have negative side effects or it negatively impacts our health. And there's a little picture of a spoon there because 2,300 milligrams is equivalent to approximately 1 teaspoon of salt. And then the last number that I have on the slide here, 2,760 milligrams, is how much the average Canadian eats. So as you can see, that is significantly higher than the maximum amount that we should be safely consuming, and even more so higher than how much our bodies actually need. So that leads me into my next point, which is why should we be reducing sodium and what happens when we have too much? So first of all, I will just say that having high blood sugar, as is commonly seen in diabetes, can increase your risk of having high blood pressure. And then on the other hand, high sodium intake also increases that risk. So for individuals with diabetes, that means that you have 2 risk factors that are potentially putting you at risk for having high blood pressure. And that's important because having high blood pressure also increases your risk of heart disease and stroke. And then I have a statistic here at the bottom of the slide that just says that a high sodium diet increases the risk of cardiovascular or heart disease by 19%. So next I want to talk about some practical ways that you can reduce sodium in your diet. So just some helpful tips of ways that you can actually put this into practice. So the first tip that I have is to read food labels. So you can do this by looking at the front of package labels, and you want to look for foods that are labeled as reduced sodium or no salt added or less salt, as can be seen on the canned items on the slide here. This also applies to non-canned items as well. You might see it on things such as broth or like packaged snacks. And additionally, you can also look at the nutrition facts table. It's a really helpful source of information as well. And you'll want to choose foods that have less than the 5% daily value of sodium. So that's the bolded number to the right, the percentage on the right-hand side of the nutrition facts table beside sodium. And the next tip that I have for you is to cook your meals more often. So this is because restaurant meals tend to be high in sodium. So ideally you want to limit the amount of meals that you eat at restaurants and the amount of ready-to-eat meals that you buy from the store. And also connected to that, when you're cooking meals more often, just be mindful of how much salt that you're adding to your meals. It can be helpful sometimes to taste your food before you add the salt. Sometimes we have a habit of just salting it just because that's what we're used to doing. But sometimes our food's already seasoned and it already tastes good. So it's really helpful to just taste your food before you start adding salt to it. And another helpful tip to reduce the amount of salt that you add to your food is to avoid bringing the salt shaker to the table. If you don't have it there, then you might not think to add more salt to your food. And then the last tip that I have is to experiment with herbs and spices. Yes, salt makes your food taste good, but it's not the only way to make your food taste good. So definitely experiment with adding flavors by adding different herbs and spices. Some of the ideas that I have on the slide here are to use garlic, lemon juice, fresh or dried herbs, or pepper. They all add great flavor to your food. Another way to do this would be you can buy prepared seasonings at the store. They're like prepared spice mixes. But my only tip for that would be to make sure that you're choosing ones that are labeled as no salt, because sometimes they might have sodium in there.
Okay, so now we're moving on to our food demo. So as we wrap up our workshop for today, we wanted to make a final statement. So making heart-healthy choices is important, but a heart-healthy diet doesn't have to mean an all or nothing. So that means that not everything that we talked about today means is important for you to do. So there are traditional dishes from different cultures that would not be the same if the main ingredients were substituted. And instead of just trying to implement all of the suggestions that we talked about today, what we want you to do is to understand what a heart healthy diet is made up of and to make changes or additions whenever possible. And also, if you noticed, there were some foods that were mentioned many times in the different components. So things like nuts and seeds, they are not only a good source of plant proteins, but they're also high in fiber and they're a good source of healthy fats. And it's also a plus if they are unsalted to reduce the amount of sodium. Same thing with beans and chickpeas. They are a good source of fiber and they are also a good source of plant proteins. And so, what we hope to have given you today is that you remember and add to your diet most or at least some of these components that we talked about today. And we really hope that this workshop was very helpful for you today. So now please take 2 to 3 minutes to complete the survey. We will be sending the survey link in the chat, and the survey link should also have been mailed to you through email. Thank you very much, everyone. And now we will open it up for any questions that you may have.